Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Oana.
So we are going to talk about the upcoming recession and why the upcoming recession might be a good time to buy a house.
Right.
Okay, so it's from an article, Recessions and Pandemics may be good times to buy homes. Maybe counterintuitive. Oana, let's go into some details about this.
Mm-hmm.
What happens, what is a recession?
A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative gross domestic product.
Okay, GDP growth falls for 2 quarters. And when the economy basically shrinks a little bit.
Correct.
The total GDP is the total cost of goods and services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what it produces. And then it's measured. It's not super accurate. I mean, it's pretty accurate, but sometimes it's, Anyway, so, and there are other things that go along with it. One of those things are job losses. Usually in boom times, there's lots of jobs created and wages go up and like that. But in a recession, generally, as the economy shrinks, people are trying to stay profitable. They shed some jobs, you get some unemployment. Mm-hmm. Why would that be a good time to buy a home if people are starting to see some unemployment?
Right. So if unemployment ticks up, then people, even who are employed, get a little bit more nervous about the economy, and maybe they're less interested in buying a house at that time, which means that we have less buyers on the market, supply and demand. We still have the same number of homes on the market, but less buyers. So that means that sellers have to entice the buyers that are available to purchase their homes. And a lot of times what they do to entice buyers is they lower the price.
Okay, but we know from other videos we've made, mm-hmm. 4 of the last 6 recessions, home prices went up, including most recent one, 2020, home prices went up during a recession.
Right. So one of the things that happens in a recession is home sellers, they're kind of tight with the money, right? So they're probably, some will lower the price, but some will not. But what happens is the government tries to stimulate the economy. So when one of the tools that the government has to stimulate the economy is the Federal Reserve lowers the interest rate. So when the interest rates go down, that means that people can actually purchase more house for the money, right? So that's part of the reason why home prices tend to actually go up during recessions rather than down, is because interest rates tend to go down as a tool to stimulate the economy to get started again and grow.
Okay, so here's a quote from the article. As counterintuitive as this may seem, recessions may be financially advantageous for buyers to purchase homes if they remain employed and have the funds to do so. That's because interest rates usually, but not always, as early as the 1980s demonstrated, fall during economic downturns. That makes home buying more affordable. Now, 5 of the last 6 recessions, home interest rates fell. The thing one is talking about is called the federal funds rate. Mm-hmm. It is the Federal Reserve's tool to impact growth in the economy and combat inflation. Basically, it's the rate overnight that member banks can charge to each other on overnight loans. So they borrow money, use the money, and loan it out. And when they borrow it cheaper, they're able to lend it cheaper, mm-hmm. because it's a competitive marketplace. And then the whole market follows it usually. So, meaning, it affects credit cards, it affects car payments, and then it affects mortgage loans because the 10-year and change. Now, the other thing too is when economy starts sputtering, there's usually a lot of pressure to drop interest rates as long as there's not inflation. As you saw during COVID, the recession was in shambles because we were locked down. And so they basically cut rates to 0. I think the target federal funds rate was like 0.17%. It was some ridiculous number. It was under 0.25.
Right.
So basically, it was 0.
So what the government does is they want to increase liquidity in the marketplace. So what they do is they lower interest rates. Now, what banks do is they borrow that money from the Federal Reserve, and then they go ahead and loan it out to consumers. So the idea is that they borrow it at one rate and then loan it out at a higher rate, and it's arbitrage, right? They just keep the difference, and they keep paying the money back to the Federal Reserve, and then they borrow again and that sort of thing. And so this goes on, and it works just fine, up until the music stops.
Now, the last best time to have bought a house, in my opinion, was 2009, 10, 11. This was during the Great Financial Crisis, the Great Recession. It was triggered by the housing market, which basically collapsed in probably 2/3 of the country. In Vegas, we felt it full on, but median home prices went from about 310 to 135. So what that meant was you could go grab a 1,500 square foot older one story for about 80 grand that would get you $1,000 a month rent. Those houses today are about $300,000, and they're getting about $2,000 a month rent. Now, interest rates were a little higher back then. And here's a little quote, another quote from the article. Over the past 50 years, homes were most affordable as the country climbed out of the Great Recession. In early 2012 and 13, buyers were spending about 14% or less of their income on a home. That's because mortgage rates were below 4%. So the sweet spot happened. And the sweet spot was two things, Oana. It was home prices had already started climbing. They'd actually been climbing for about 2 years, but interest rates were still falling. So 2013, when home prices had gone up for a couple years, there was this fear of a housing crash because of shadow inventory, because we hadn't accounted for all of the foreclosures. There were all these foreclosures, and then they went away, and everyone's waiting for like the second round of the tsunami of foreclosures were going to happen. That never happened. We still have never seen it. Those homes, and we know those homes have all transacted somehow, and they're owned by people.
Right. So those homes were sold differently. They weren't sold on the open market to individual end users. Those homes were bundled, and they were sold to institutions or large investors for a variety of reasons. But it doesn't negate the fact that to Todd's point, 2011 to 2013, 14 was a great time to buy a house. I think that probably all the way to 2018, 19 was a great time to buy a house, because all those homes have a considerable amount of equity in them at this point, because there's been so much appreciation since that time. Not only that, but they were purchased with low interest rates for those that didn't pay cash for them. So that made those homes very attractive and really good investments. That's not to say that anybody who bought a home after that didn't get a great deal. Lots of people got great deals, especially those that ended up either financing or refinancing and have those sub 4% rates. You guys got great deals. Congratulations. You may have paid a little more for the house, but it's still well worth it, because at the end of the day, your payment is very manageable.
Okay. The last year, we saw prices come down from highs, which were artificial highs. Interest rates skyrocketed, but prices didn't come down enough. In some markets, they didn't come down at all. But like in Vegas, I think we're down 6% total. Prices are going back up again here. But they haven't gone down enough to make up for the change in interest rate. So I think that's what's got people frustrated, is we have people calling for home prices need to fall further. And the only reason they're saying that is because interest rates are separate. If interest rates are 1%, nobody would care about the price of the house. They would be like, how much is my payment? Oh, I could $800 a month. I can buy a 5,000 square foot house with a pool in a nice neighborhood. Give it to me. I don't care what the price is. I'll just buy it, right? So what do you tell them about, like, prices are probably not going to collapse if we have a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, the next recession, home prices are jobs, the recession will be announced, the jobs will be lost. On Wednesday, the foreclosures will happen. On Thursday, home prices will have collapsed, and they'll be you could buy a house for $1. That's probably not going to happen.
Probably not.
So how do they take advantage of the next recession? Because there are people right now trying to make this decision. Like, do I just buy? Because right now what people are doing is they're just buying if they can find a deal. And then they just said they'll just refi because they don't know what's going to happen to home prices. So they're buying now, and they're just going to refi in a year, 18 months, whenever, interest rates have dropped like 1.5% or something. Right.
So none of us have precise knowledge of the future, but all of us know some basic facts. First, basic fact number one, if you are buying a house to live in and you have found the house that you have been searching for, and it's the right house for you, the right time for you to purchase, you can afford it, and everything else lines up for you, you've got your emergency fund, everything else is good for you, then this might be the time for you to buy, understanding that yes, things are going to be uncomfortable for a while, but at some point you'll be able to refinance. Now, we are in an environment with inflation, so I wouldn't cut it too close to the vest. As far as that's concerned, I would make sure that you can afford it without stretching. I don't think this is the time to stretch. I'm never fond of stretching regardless. I'm not fond of people living on ramen noodles. I've done that. It's not particularly fun. It kind of sounds romantic, but it kind of wears thin after a while. As far as an investment is concerned, investments are a different situation because investments have to meet a lot of different criteria. But, again, the same thing. If you're in a position to purchase an investment property and you've done your math, this investment makes sense for you, and you've got some cushion to weather, maybe a lesser rent or maybe longer vacancy rates, that sort of thing, then, go for it. If you're not in that position, then maybe you need to wait. Everybody's situation is different, so we're not telling anybody to go out there and buy. What we are saying is look at your particular situation, see what makes sense for you. Put pencil to paper and do the math, do the work. Because once you do the work, then the answer is self-evident.
Hopefully inventory, I think a perfect scenario. Some inventory builds up. It's not in Vegas, it's still going down, but it builds up in the summer and the fall a little bit more, hopefully more. I don't think we're going to get back to we're at half of a normal right now. I don't think we get back to normal. Don't think it happens. But let's say we get back to 3/4 of the amount of inventory we should have. And then we have a little recession. Now, it probably won't affect Vegas. There won't be any job losses. But remember, the interest rate changes will affect everybody across the country because they don't do that by region. It's just interest rates go down. So, there may be some opportunities, but I think a lot of people, this is the problem, is this what I've heard people say. But Todd, as soon as interest rates fall, buyers are going to flood back in and I'm going to be competing and I may not get the house I want or I may have to pay even more for it. So remember, you're not locked into that loan for 30 years just because you get a 30-year fixed. Mm-hmm. You're only locked into loan for 30 years if you want to keep it. Like the people who have the 2 point whatever percent interest rates, they're like, I'm not giving that up. But if you have a 7%, there was actually a refi boom in December because interest rates went below 6%. Remember that in like January? So October they hit like 7.2 or something, and then they dropped over 1%. In January there's like a huge refi boom where like they had a ton of refis, and then people refied at like 5.75 or whatever. I talked to a guy that actually told me he got 5% on a refi, and I don't remember was it because it was VA or portfolio loan or whatever, but he goes, yeah, I refied my house at 5%. I was super thrilled. Right.
Well, people are still refining now, not en masse certainly, but sometimes it makes sense for somebody. So let's say, for example, that they just the way their finances are structured, that maybe they've got high credit card debt, or maybe they also have a few car loans that are at higher interest rates and that sort of thing, and they figure out that if they refi, then their monthly payment will actually be lower between when they're considering what they're currently paying for housing, to service their credit card debt and their car loans. That's more money than if they just refied the house and paid off all that debt. That makes more sense for them. So everybody's situation is different, and that's why I always say, put pencil to paper and see what the math says, because the math doesn't lie, and that will help you make your decision.
I think this is just Vegas. I think as soon as home prices drop a little bit, buyers are going to come back.
Well, I think buyers will come back when there's product. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think interest rates are the biggest thing. I don't think inventory numbers are the biggest thing. I think viable product is the biggest thing. So what I mean by that is homes that people actually want to buy. So nice homes is what we have a shortage of. It's not just overall inventory, but we have a shortage of nice homes. In the last 2 weeks in Vegas, more than 300 more houses sold than were put on the new ones coming on the market. And if you watch our market update from a few days ago, inventory was screaming this time last year. It was coming on like crazy. And it was coming from a low, like decades lows, but it's now back to this is the second or third lowest inventory we've ever had that I can remember in Vegas. Right. Yeah. So that's what's going on. Tell us what you think. We like to read your thoughts in the comments. We appreciate everybody being polite to one another in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye. Bye.